because I do see a lot of golfers that struggle really with controlling the club face off of the golf ball. Today's topic is one that I know a lot of you out there struggle with because I see it all of the time with students that come to me. Welcome to my channel. My name is TJ Valentine. I am a PGA teaching professional. I've been teaching this amazing game for 25 years. I've been ranked top in the state by Golf Digest. Been a top instructor in New England, plus some other things. I know a lot of you may be seeing me for the first time, so a little credibility check on who you're listening to is not a bad thing. We're gonna dive into the comments today, because I had a really good comment from Ted Williams. Teddy Ball Game, is that you? I can't for the life of me stop opening the club face in my backswing. Would love to hear your thoughts on this. Ted, you're not alone, because I do see a lot of golfers that struggle really with controlling the club face off of the golf ball. And what he was referring to was, as the club goes off of the golf ball, the club face opens up, it rolls open, it points to the sky, the club face points to the sky. This will create a chain of events at that point, because ultimately what has to happen is that club face has to get back to a neutral position. So there's a lot of corrections, there's a lot of extreme rotations, there's a lot of flipping, there's a lot of things that have to go on to compensate for a club face that is rolling open. And players that typically have a club face that rolls open typically are over the toppers, because what they're trying to do when they come over the top, they're trying to square the club face up. So that visual of coming over the top really is just a net result of that club face opening. Now, I did another video on coming over the top and how to reduce your over the top through the ground and your balance. I'll put a link below to that video if you want to check that out. This is potentially a little bit different, but they also can work together. Because again, if at address, I am too much on my toes, I could potentially roll the face open. What I see a lot of players do is when they take their trail hand and put it on the club, they put it on top. And what I mean by that is the arm comes from the top. And essentially what that does is it rotates the forearm, it rotates the shoulder at that point, and really positions the arm in a way that it actually has to rotate open on the way back. So think of it this way, and I'm gonna go to extremes for this example. If I was to take my right arm here and turn it in as much as I could. Now, this is not how my arm naturally hangs. So if I was to relax this arm, what's gonna happen? It's gonna rotate this way. Now, on the other hand, if I take my arm and I rotate it this way to the right, now if I was to relax this arm, it's gonna rotate in. How does this correlate with the golf swing? Well, if my hand is too much on top, and I'm not even talking about necessarily a big weak grip. So what a weak grip is, me as a righty, my trail hand, left hand can too, be turned too much to the left on the grip. A strong grip is when the hand is too much under the grip. They are related, but they're not 100% one-to-one. So I see a lot of players, again, that come in with that trail arm, and they come in on top. Now, what that's gonna do, it's going to turn that forearm in, it's gonna turn that shoulder in. And ultimately, when I come in like that, and I take the golf club back, this club face is gonna open up. Now, when that club face opens up, I have to chase an open club face dynamically in my swing. Like I said, I may come over the top, I may get very flippy, I may move my body in a way to try to counteract that. I'm an athlete, I'm gonna try to get this guy back to the ball some way. And it's a circle that players run in. But the thing is, it's also a visual thing. So when players say film themselves, they see that face wide open. So they know it's happening. And that's what drives them nuts, because they keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, and they cannot correct it. So this is what I want to have you do. And in a second here, I'm going to hit some balls using Hackmotion. Hackmotion is a tool that can measure wrist angles, flexion, extension, rotation, a whole bunch of other things too. And I'm going to pinpoint a couple pieces. And I'm going to give you a before and after look, just to demonstrate the differences of just how getting into the golf shot can help you or hurt you on the other end. So how should you get into the setup? How should that trail arm work? So we want that trail arm essentially to work underneath. Now, what I just did there, now this is a very extreme motion. I would love for you to work on this at home to get the sensation. I am rotating my forearms and my shoulder in a way where I'm coming into the golf club with my forearms more towards, say, the camera, looking at you right now. So I'm coming in here. Now, I can still have a neutral looking grip there, but I am now wound this way. What is this going to do? Go back to that example of me rotating the arm out. That arm wants to rotate in. So if I get my hand on the club this way, do you know what's going to happen? As I take the club back, that trail arm is going to rotate more this way. And if it rotates more that way, what is the club face going to do? It's going to stay more neutral to the circle that you're swinging on. Now, obviously, there's a point of diminishing returns. I can also get into this position, and I could get in with too strong of a grip. Now, what this is going to do is going to overclose the club face on the way back, because everything's really going to work down. So there is a fine line in all of this. So again, take your trail arm, work it underneath, get that good neutral grip. You're going to have a much easier time getting into this position right here. And for those of you that don't know, from a two-dimensional standpoint, from where the camera is on my hand path line, we want to be able to see the club face 45-ish degrees relative to the ground. This would be parallel to the ground. That is a very closed club face. This is an open club face. This is a very open club face, and I do see a lot of players that get into that position. We want to see this. Now, dynamically throughout the swing, that club face is going to stay more stable and more neutral just by going into the golf club from this direction at address. So I'm going to be using Hackmotion to measure some angles in the golf swing, and just to show you how the differences in setup will really change your wrist angles dynamically through the golf swing, which will ultimately affect your face angle. So if you don't know what Hackmotion is, it is a sensor that you put on your wrist, and it measures such variables as flexion and extension, plus rotation dynamically in your golf swing. Plus it also tracks your tempo. I use this in a lot of my lessons, plus a lot of my students have we'll call it a home version of this, a player version of this, that they use to track what they do on the range, and it helps really me when they're not in here, or also if they are a remote coaching student of mine. So let's wrap this up by talking about the differences and what actually is happening now after I changed how I went into the golf club with my trail arm at address. The first thing I want to show you is the difference, or really lack thereof, with the setup from this angle. So if you take a look at both of these swings right here, the one on the left is the one where I approached the grip more from the top. The one on the right is where I approached it more from underneath. The grip looks very much the same. Now, if I'm being, super duper duper precise, most likely the one on the right is slightly stronger. What I mean by stronger is the trail hand is turned slightly more to the right. But for the most part, fairly negligible. Remember, the objective of all of this was to get the trail forearm and the trail shoulder to rotate in more. And that's going to create more of this dynamic motion through the golf swing. Not necessarily just changing the grip, because I can manipulate the grip, but it may or may not go up the chain in my trail arm. So again, they look very, very similar from here. Now let's go to where we really can see the difference. And again, this one on the left is the one where I had the trail hand on top, the one on the right, trail hand coming in from the bottom. I'm gonna go to a couple key frames here. So we're gonna go to this position here, oops, and we're going to go to this position here. These are both. This is pretty much the same position in the backswing on with both of these swings here. So this is pretty much the same position in the backswing, and you'll notice this club face and this club face at this point, very different positions. So if we take a look at this club face, we are pointing here. This club face, we are pointing here. You can almost look at that as 45 degrees, and then this one more towards the sky. Now, when we say a club face is open or closed, we always have to say, or we always have to ask, open or closed to what? So when I say this one on the left, this face is more open than this one right here, it's open to what? Well, it's open to the swing circle or the arc that the club is traveling on, not the target line at that point in the golf swing. So whenever you hear someone say the club face is open, if it's dynamic, open to what? You know, it's open to the circle that the club is swinging on. So if we clear this out and go to the top of the swing, and I'm going to freeze frame here, and I'm going to freeze frame here. You can notice there is a significant difference at the top as well. So this position that we saw off of the golf ball wasn't just that point in time. It is dynamic. This is throughout the golf swing. Now, from here back to the ball, you have roughly 0.3 seconds. That's not a lot of time. So with the club face being way more open to the arc at this point and neutral to the arc at this point, this one on the left has a lot more catching up to do at that point. Do you know how players catch up? Go back to what I said earlier in this video. They flip, they rotate, they back up. They do all sorts of things to try to manipulate the club face back at impact. And honestly, there's a lot of timing in that. The one on the right, the one where we came from underneath, there's less timing involved in that because that club face remains neutral to the circle much longer dynamically. So there's less things that a player that approaches it like the one on the right has to do. There's less flipping, there's less timing overall. So again, it goes back to players that open the club face on the way back. It's just not a vanity thing. It's just not a thing that people see and go, ooh, I don't want to do that, I'm rolling the wrist. It is a technical thing dynamically through the golf swing that creates a mismatch with most players. Now, you can always find somebody that is going to do a great job of rotating the club face closed and having a relatively small variability in their club face angle at impact, but that's, in the big picture, that's rare. I want to give every student that I work with the greatest chance to have the smallest variability of club face at impact. Club face control ultimately is one of the most important pieces of the puzzle. And I want to make sure there are no stones unturned in terms of giving the player the best chance they can have to have a very small window to work with. So let me go back over to the tee box really quick. I just want to show you a couple variables with the Hackmotion, just the differences between the two swings and how I really use this data to help myself and help players as well. So let's wrap this up by taking a look at the Hackmotion data as it pertains to the two different approaches to our setup and really just how it changes how the wrist angles work during the golf swing. And again, I'm not doing anything consciously to change the wrist angle positions in these swings. When I get into the golf ball from here, relative to here, this is setting up my body and my trail arm to move the hands and the body a certain way and ultimately controlling the club face a different way. So as you can see on the screen right now, I have the Hackmotion on. And if I take my wrist and I go in this direction, this is what we call extension. And we're talking about obviously the trail hand here. And if I go in this direction, we have flexion. The more extension, the more flexion. Now, the more extension we get with that trail wrist during the backswing and dynamically during the swing, the more the club face is going to stay more closed. And again, closed to what? Closed to the circle that we're swinging on. So I'm just going to show you two swings here, where I go from the top and go from the bottom, and then just show you how the wrist angles differ between these two swings. So what did that Hackmotion data just prove to me? Well, there was a 10-degree difference in extension at the top of the golf swing. And the only difference we made was going into the golf club from here to here, which changed the forearm angles, which changed the bicep and the shoulder angles at address, which allowed the club an easier time to get into a more neutral club face here, and ultimately a neutral club face here, and dynamically throughout the golf swing. Your setup has a lot to do with everything that goes on in your golf swing. Don't neglect it.